Hello everybody, Assalamu alaikum. This is me, Faria Mubashira Rahman, your IGCSE Human Biology Tutor from Elevare. And today I would be discussing over a question from the IGCSE Human Biology October-November 2023, paper 2. All right. All right. So let's begin solving the question. Okay, so this question says that a vaccine is used to protect people against a disease. The graph shows the level of antibodies in the blood of a child given the vaccine. 3 doses of the vaccines were given and then a booster dose was given. All right. So this question basically focuses on vaccination and the immune response of the body towards a pathogen or disease-causing organism. All right. So basically, it is focusing on immunity. Okay. So they have provided here a graph for further information. It shows that the child has received 3 doses of vaccines, the first dose, the second dose, and the third dose over here, and then also a booster dose. And there is an unsafe level of antibody, this line. Okay, so this line is an important part, and it clearly means that if the level of antibody is falling below this line, it means that the child is vulnerable to the disease-causing organism because the body of the child is not producing enough antibodies to create sufficient resistance against that disease-causing organism. All right. So they have provided this graph showing the age in years and the level of antibody in the blood in arbitrary units over here. And the fluctuations of the level of antibodies has been shown. So before we move on to solving this question, let's have a quick review on how vaccination works in our body and how the immunity is created. All right. All right, so here I have obtained a diagram. This diagram is from your textbook and it shows how vaccination is going to work in your body. So what happens is that consider when a pathogen, which is a disease-causing organism, basically when a disease-causing organism is entering your body, it may be a virus or a bacteria or whatever, all of them have these small particles attached to their surfaces, and these are known as antigens. So these antigens are basically what the body detects as foreign, and every pathogen has specifically its own different antigen, which differs from the other pathogen. So what normally happens is that when a pathogen is invading the body, your white blood cells are going to be triggered and they are going to attack these pathogens. And hence, when these have been attacked, the pathogens are going to be destroyed. And what there remains are the toxins or the dead organism and their antigens. So the lymphocytes then work. If you must know that white blood cells are of two types, one is a lymphocyte and one is a phagocyte. What the lymphocyte does is these lymphocytes are going to detect these antigens and hence produce antibodies according to these antigens. As you can see, so these are the antigens, antibodies produced according to the specific antigens. So once these antibodies have been produced, now your body has a good source of defense against that disease-causing pathogen. So the next time the pathogen is coming, now your body is ready for the attack. And when the pathogen enters, now these antibodies released quickly bind to the surface antigens of the pathogens, and hence the lymphocytes and these phagocytes now can clearly recognize these disease-causing pathogen much faster, and hence the immune response is much faster because they are going to destroy these disease-causing pathogens more quickly, and hence immunity is created better. All right. So what happens in the case of vaccination now that we have understood how immunity works, how immunity is produced? Vaccination is basically an artificial active immunity. Why it is artificial? Because these antigens or the toxins of the bacteria or the virus that is invading is has no need, the bacteria of the virus do not need to come and attack our body. We already can have their antigens provided in a body via a foreign source, and hence the lymphocyte can recognize them, detect them, and produce antibody to have a defense system already prepared. And because of the vaccine, we can be made immune to a disease without actually becoming infected by the disease. What happens in vaccination is that in a vaccination, a person is given an agent, that is, the antigens of the same particular disease causing organism, or maybe its toxins, or its DNA, or RNA, or its fragment, or maybe the weakened organism, or the dead organism itself. So once the vaccine has provided these materials to the lymphocytes now work quickly and detect the surface antigens and now make a stock of antibodies. Now, whether that disease causing organism is going to come in your body first time, second time, or even third time, it does not matter. Your beforehand made antibodies are now ready. Your defense system is ready for attacking the disease causing antigens. I mean, the disease causing pathogens. Sorry. And so now these antibodies can quickly recognize the disease causing particles, cells, or organisms, and lymphocytes are going to act against them, phagocytes are going to destroy them, and hence the body is immune to that disease. All right. So this is how vaccination works. So if we are clear with this concept over here, so we shall begin now starting to solve the question. Let's move on to solve the question. All right. So let's begin with the first part. It says that part A, state the general name given to the disease causing organism. All right. So you should always know whether it is a bacteria or whether it is a virus or whatever. Every disease causing organism has the one general name, and that is pathogen. So they're basically known as pathogens, simply. So you should always know, this is a very common question and a straightforward question that comes in the paper, and it is a very easy to score this 1 mark without missing it. All right. So the next question of part B, number 1, states that determine the time in years between the first dose and the third dose of the vaccine. All right. So the first dose and the third dose, let's have a quick look at this graph, which shows the first dose is here and the third dose is right here. The first dose is around here somewhere at this point, and it is 0.8 approximately. Okay. And the third dose is here as this line follows. Right here. Okay. So the third dose is right here, which is 2. So as you can see, so the timing of the first dose is 0.8 and the third dose is 2. So time be 2 minus 0.8, which is going to be 1.2 years in time. So it is 1.2 years between the first dose and the third dose. All right. So let's move to the next question. It says that state the type of immunity that vaccination produces. So I have mentioned this thing earlier that vaccination is always an active, artificial immunity. All right. Why active? Because it is constantly producing antibodies, detecting the antigens, and also memory cells so that your body can always remember the response that is needed to be created when this particular type of a bacteria or a virus or maybe a disease causing organism is next time invading your body. And artificial because the antigens or the triggering substance, which is basically the toxins or the weakened organism itself, is being supplied from somewhere else, right? So it basically means that artificial because the antigens are obtained from elsewhere and used in the body to make the antibodies. The antibodies are not made naturally by the antigens inside the body. All right. So let's move to part three. It states that name two components that could be in a vaccine that would help trigger immunity. Okay. So also this thing we discussed when we were discussing vaccination, that the components that could trigger immunity is the weakened organism itself, its toxins, or maybe its antigens. So let's get that down. The weakened organisms and the antigens. So here we have the answer. And the next question, let's move to part C, which is, all right, so part C states that there are some antibodies in the blood of the child before the vaccination is given. Explain why there are antibodies in the blood before vaccination. So, is there is presence of antibodies before the child is vaccinated? It clearly means that the unvaccinated child did not make the antibodies in his or her body. The body did not make the antibodies itself. It has received it from a source or somewhere. So, the source for this child can be the mother. So, the source of the mother, it clearly means that it is passed from the mother to the child. There are two possibility ways, and one is via the breast milk when the child has been breastfed, and the second possibility is that maybe the antibodies passed the child through the uterus, like across the placenta when the child was still in the uterus. All right, so let's write this answer down. Okay, it's all right. So this is because the the antibodies can be transferred to the child from the mother via the placenta when the child is still in the uterus, or through breast milk. Okay, so we have the answer done, and let's move on to the next part, which is explain why a booster dose is necessary. So sometimes vaccinations are not so effective, and an extra booster injections have to be given to maintain a person's immunity. So what the booster is going to do is that it is basically going to raise the level of antibodies to a certain level so it does not fall below the unsafe level of antibody. It is very important, which means it is maintaining the perfect adequate level of antibodies required for providing efficient immunity to the child. All right. Mm. After after the third dose, there is a fall in the antibody levels of the person, which means there is a greater risk of the person having the disease. Hence, therefore, a booster dose is required to increase the antibody levels to reach above the safe level to remain normal, and hence the person can become immune to the disease since the number of memory cells produced increases. All right. So here is the marker distribution. The mark distribution is that there is a fall in the antibody levels, which means there is a greater risk of the person having the disease. and the booster dose is required to increase the level of antibodies to reach above the safe level, and hence the person can become immune to the disease since the number of memory cells produced increases. All right. So when you're solving a question, a broad question, it is very important, especially for 5 markers or 6 markers, it is very important to know how the specific mark schemes have divided the marks into different points. So it is very important that you notice that you have mentioned the points perfectly, so there is no risk of missing a mark. So here is a for 1 point, a 2 point, which is 2 mark, and a third mark here, fourth mark, and the fifth mark. The immune to the disease, and since the number of memory cells produced have increased. All right. So you can see here in the graph, it shows like these third dose are given, but there is a drastical fall of the level of antibodies right over here. And after the booster dose, the level of antibodies is actually increase very fast. And also here it is decreasing, but it is not below the safe level at any cost, which means that the person is safe. All right, so let's move on to the last part of this question, which is part E. It states that given two difference between the effects of the first 3 doses and the effects of the booster dose. All right. So if we focus on the diagram, you can see that for these first 3 doses, so for these 3 doses right over here, you can see that the level of antibodies up to here, and for the booster dose at once, the level of antibodies have increased higher than this part. If you clearly see this graph, so which means the first point can be that it increases the antibodies increase is much more greater for the booster dose than the normal 3 doses. So here we can write down that the levels of antibody increase faster after the booster dose than the first 3 doses. And the next point can be the last point says that antibodies level can remain high or unaffected for longer period of time after the booster dose. All right. Why I wrote this is because, as you can see, the antibody levels falls drastically, as I said earlier, after the 3 doses, and it remains at a high level for a very small time. See, it's from here to here only. And for the booster dose, it remains stable. The antibody levels remain stable for a longer period of time, which means that the person is now healthier. All right. So we have reached the end of this question. Hope you liked the video. And let me know if you have any other confusions in any questions. All right. Thank you.